everyone. For those of you new to the channel, I'm a digital analytics consultant and I'm very enthusiastic about new technologies in the data world. So if you're working on Adobe Marketing Cloud, Tag Managers, or Customer Data Platform, this is the channel for you. Please subscribe. I will really appreciate that. A lot of effort goes into making these videos and a little motivation will be helpful. Today's topic is how to create Adobe Target Audiences in XDM format and how to use them with AEP Web SDK or Edge Network Server API. So we'll basically talk about mbox parameters, but in the context of AEP Web SDK or Edge Network Server API. So let's get started. So we'll talk about the first one is AEP Web SDK, how to use mbox parameters which are created in XDM format with AEP Web SDK. As you can see, this is an activity where we have used an XDM based audience, right? As you can see, the audience is test profile script and test mbox. Test mbox is the audience which is XDM based, and we have shown the definition of text mbox. So the definition is web.webpagedetails.site section equals service. So that's the XDM format. This is the basic response that you will see in console when you have the debug enabled, right, for Web SDK. So the first of all, it's you can see Adobe Support Experience B being printed to the console. So that is basically coming from the activity. The activity which we had configured had this content inside it where we were printing Adobe Support Experience B to the console. And this can also be seen in the activity configuration screenshot at the bottom, right? It's the same thing. Then the second part to the first screenshot is where we are seeing that the send event is returning a response with the propositions array, right? We had seen this because the Web SDK has debug enabled in the debugger. So now if you see the propositions array, you see the activity ID and then the items array. And then inside the items array, you see the data part. Now data part is the actual content of the activity, which is again console.log, right? The same that is being printed to the console as we can see in the response. And then we have the meta part where we have the activity ID, activity name, experience ID, experience.name. So experience.name is experience B, which we can also see in the activity configuration. So this is how it looks like, right? So basically you have the activity configured. You use an XDM based audience. XDM based audience, it's very easy to create that, right? You just use that format and that's how it works. And then you use it in an activity and this is how you can see the response. So now we will look at the Edge API method, right? Again, here is an activity where we are using XDM based audience. Here you can just see the test mbox audience, right? And test mbox definition is web.webpagedetails.site section equals IAA. Okay. And mind you, it has to be a custom parameter. Within Target, you will see these XDM based data in the audience builder as a custom parameter, right? So this is the definition of the XDM based audience. As you can see here, this is the Edge API request where we are using an XDM based audience, right? So when you were using the delivery API, the target delivery API, there we used to pass these mbox parameters inside the request, right? Now here what we are doing is we have the standard request, right? And if you want to know more about Edge API request and responses, you can go to my other video on AEP Edge API where we are discussing these, how to create Edge API request, how does the response look like, how to interact with different Adobe solutions, right? The link is provided in the description. Now, looking at this particular request, As you can see here, the highlighted structure, we are passing the site section value in the same format, web.webpage details, right? Same JSON structure, and we are passing the site section value. If you do not pass the site section value, this, your request will not qualify, your activity will not qualify, right? So basically, if you're sending this request, you will not get the response for the XDM based audience activity, right? So we saw the request. Now let's look at a negative scenario, right? We said that if we do not pass the value, or say if we pass a wrong value, as you can see here, the site section value has a small a at the end of the string, right? Which was not there in our audience definition. So now you can see that the payload is an empty array. That's the response of the request. Again, I will repeat, in the case of a negative scenario where we do not pass the site section value, or we pass it with a value that doesn't match the audience definition, then in that case, the response will be, payload will be an empty array. That's how it works. So you can see the type is personalization decisions, and the payload for that type is an empty array, right? Now let's look as a positive scenario. Now in the positive scenario, we pass the value that matched the audience definition. The site section that is being passed here is exactly matching that definition. And so in this case, our payload comes up with the appropriate activity ID, activity scope, and other scope details, right? So the entire activity ID, scope details are there in the payload, right? So this is how it works. You create an XDM based audience, right, in the appropriate format that is conforming to your schema, right? And then you use that audience in your activity, and then whether you are using Web SDK or Edge API, you will see how it works like I have demonstrated. With Web SDK, there's no additional step, like you have the target enabled in your Web SDK and everything, and then when you run the activity, you will see that you are able to see the appropriate responses, right? You're able the once you are able to qualify for the segment, you will see the desired behavior. And with Edge API, in the request, you have to pass the appropriate values in the same JSON structure, and then you will see the appropriate response for the activity, which is activity ID, scope, and other details, right? And in the case that you do not pass, or you pass values that do not match the segment definition, your payload will be an empty array. So this is all I had to share on this. I hope you are able to, use this, and this video is helpful. Do like, share, and subscribe. Let me know in the comment section if you have any specific questions, and I'll be happy to share my knowledge on the same. Happy learning, everyone.